Right, we'll get going. Thanks for joining me today, David. It's great to meet you virtually, all the way from Belgium, and bring you to Type 1 and Tech in the UK. Um, Start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and when you were diagnosed with Type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm David. I'm a triathlete, a father of two, a husband, and a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed in 1999. That was when I was 13 years old. So I've had diabetes for over 23 years.
Thanks. Um, I was diagnosed in 1992, so I always appreciate meeting anyone who's also diagnosed in the 1990s, to feel less old. Um, I want to go on and talk a little bit about your particular sport. You mentioned you're a triathlete. How did you find your way into triathlon, and what were your initial considerations around it when it comes to your diabetes management?
Well, when I was young, I didn't really enjoy sports so much, to be honest. At the hospital, when I was diagnosed, they warned me about physical activity and like the dangers of hypoglycemia. And they said I didn't have to take part in the gym classes if I didn't feel great. So that's what I did most of the time. I didn't like sports at that time, and I was and I still am a real foodie, and yeah, I also enjoyed a drink. So yeah, I was a bit overweight back then. And then one day I was, yeah, I think 30 years old. I went to the ophthalmologist for a diabetes checkup, and she told me that I had the first signs of retinopathy, so one of the complications of type 1 diabetes, and that could eventually lead to blindness. So I was almost 30, as I said, and my wife was pregnant of our first daughter. So I started thinking about the future, and yeah, the fact that I wanted to be a healthy father for my daughter, and maybe even a grandfather at some point. So yeah, that's when I made a decision that things had to change. I really had to change my life. So I bought myself a road bike and said, okay, I'm going to start riding it 3 times a week until I'm healthy again. Now, it turned out I really liked riding my bike. So I soon started doing longer rides and riding more often. And then one day, one of my best friends asked me if I wanted to join for swimming and running. So he had been an athlete in his childhood, but he had stopped exercising during his studies, as so many people do. So yeah, he also wanted to do something about his health, and yeah, we started training together, and we figured out that we had to set a goal to stay motivated. So we said, okay, let's do something really crazy and just register for a triathlon 6 months in the future. So that's what we did, and that's how it all started. From short course triathlons, I moved on to a half Ironman, and then to the full Ironman distance. An Ironman, just to give you an idea, it's a 2.5 mile swim, followed by 112 miles on the bike, and then a full 26-mile marathon in a row. So 6 years later, that's where I am now. Lost about 35 pounds in weight, much more energy. My retinopathy, my eyes has disappeared. So, well, sports has been a real game changer for me.
Amazing. As an aside, how long does an Ironman take roughly?
Well, it depends on your fitness, I would say. Well, I think the athletes, they do it around 8 hours. I'm around the 10-hour mark. So,
Okay. So that's 10 hours of constant moving.
yes.
Interesting. Thinking about that, do you have any useful tools or technology that you use in particular to manage your diabetes? while you're training and competing?
Yeah, I would say that my CGM is my main tool. It's connected to my watch. So to measure is to know. And yeah, you can't make any decisions without knowing your blood glucose. So that's the first thing you need. It also gives me peace of mind when I'm training or racing, because I can just look at my watch, and you do look at your watch quite often. So yeah, then I can just check on my sugars at any point, basically. And then my second tool is my Omnipod Dash insulin pump. So I use it to adjust my insulin delivery on the go and during exercise. And that's a lot easier than injecting insulin on the bike, I can assure you, because I used to do that. It's also waterproof, so I can keep my insulin running when I'm in the pool or doing an open water swim. And that's also really, really useful. So that are my main tools, I would say, my CGM and my insulin pump.
That's great. Yeah, we've come a very, very long way since the 90s. Um, thinking about, I guess, hindsight, what have you learned about diabetes management that's made a difference to your performance in triathlon?
Well, I tend to see diabetes as the fourth discipline of a triathlon. I always say that. It takes just as much practice as the other three legs, and you never stop learning. But once you've got it set, it works. I mean, usually works. So for instance, as a type 1 diabetic, you learn to avoid fast acting carbs usually to prevent like these roller coaster sugars. As an athlete, that's a bit different because you really need these fast carbs to perform well during training and racing, and quite a lot of them. If you don't eat carbs during long sessions, you get depleted and you don't perform well, right? So one of the things I learned is that you can actually eat like an athlete during a race, and you can still keep your sugars in check, even if you have type 1 diabetes. I often eat, as I said, around 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour during races, so to keep my body running at these high intensities. So yeah, it takes a lot of practice, I would say, to be able to do that. But once you've got that figured out, and once I had that figured out, my performance increased dramatically because I used to train with less food and just think, okay, I'm a diabetic, I can't eat too much, I have to watch out, I can't eat too much carbs. But then I was just totally depleted by the end of the race, and that's something I really learned, and that's made a huge difference in performance.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And a very brilliant doctor reminded me of that on the weekend, that even as people with type 1, the main, I guess the main component of really good fitness is nutrition and carbohydrate storage, and what's in our muscles from what we eat. So yeah, type 1 is very important, but we also have to remember that good sort of principles of sport management is key as well. And kind of what another person without diabetes has to go through, we still have to think about that as well. Yes, thank you for that.
I mean, you're still an athlete, right? I mean, you have type 1 diabetes, but you're still an athlete. You're still competing with other athletes. So you can't like say, okay, I'm type 1, I have type 1 diabetes, I can't eat, because then you can't beat the competition. That's that's just how it works. So that's important
Absolutely.
to keep that in mind.
Yeah, a good reminder for my CrossFit competition on the 16th of October. Um, so let's go back to 1999 and 13-year-old David. what would you say to your younger self about type 1 diabetes and about being active and sport? What's your kind of reflection?
Well, I would say get moving, because I, as a, yeah, when I was young, I didn't move enough. So type 1 diabetes, I think, shouldn't be an obstacle for doing sports. Being active is important for everyone, of course, but even more so for people with type 1 diabetes. You can really add a lot of healthy years to your life if you start exercising regularly. And yeah, you don't all have to do long course triathlon Ironman events. That's not necessary, but just doing a little bit of activity 3 times a week, for starters, it can dramatically improve your diabetes management. So yeah, it's my mission basically to get more people with type 1 diabetes moving, and to help them take control of their diabetes through exercise, because I think that exercise is a real enabler for that. And it's very important that the type 1 diabetics move and be active. It's very important for them.
I can't think of a better way to end that conversation. Thank you so much, David, for bringing your knowledge and your journey as well. I think that's very important, what you've seen through your years and how it started for you. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And
My
yeah,
pleasure.
we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
It's going good, isn't it? What a great session we are having today. And I've just realized, literally while we were in those sessions, that today is my diaversary. So today, well, I mean, it's not celebrating, I'm recognizing 7 years living with type 1 diabetes. So do let me know if you're recognizing your own diagnosis date. I want to give a shout out to Claire and her 10-year-old with type 1 who are watching this together. What a lovely experience for them both. And thank you to everyone really that's joining today. Type 1 and tech sort of go hand in hand. I recently did a piece with BBC Radio Gloucestershire all about the tech developments of type 1 diabetes and tech. We got Dr. Partha Carr on, and he told us about what's going to be happening with CGMs in the coming sort of years and months. And people loved it. People loved, even people without type 1 diabetes, loved to just hear about tech developments that are helping people living with such a tough condition that we do. Anyway, I want to say a huge thank you to Sandra and everyone really that was involved, David, Eleanor and Charlotte, for bringing their expertise and experience to type 1 and tech. 2022. Now, a small secret, Sandra is a proper gym bunny and always keeps up with Diabetes UK's challenges. I think I got involved with the 100 sit-ups every day in May. Was it May? I think it was May. Either way, I've undone all the good work that I did there. Anyway, Charlotte doing burpees is no mean feast. They are type 1 strong.